you may have seen a headline recently that said, "Agent banned for 5 years for corrupt approach to county coach," or something like that, or a variation of. But this very much happened. And let me tell you a couple of things I know about this, because I think you'll find it kind of wild. The first one is that the agent's name is Moghees Ahmed. He runs a group called the ICA. They've got quite a few players on their books, but a kind of small time when it comes to major agencies. Their main work revolves around getting players into smaller leagues, T20 franchises, and things like that. So what you have here is a Pakistani agent who I think lives most of his time in the UK, who has this agency. They do a lot of work in leagues, but they're very big when it comes to Pakistan and Pakistani players. And while they may not be big time anymore, there was a time when they had two of Pakistan's major players in Misbah and Ajmal. Ajmal is kind of where this all starts for me, because you could see I am on this board. Mo reached out to me to ask if I wanted to interview Ajmal. I think it was when he was making a comeback or anything, but I've always found him very fascinating as a player. I was working for Cricket Info at the time, so I interviewed him and I spent a lot of time chatting to Mo. That's not even where this stops. So you can imagine my surprise when I wake up and I see that the agent banned for 5 years for corrupt approach to a county coach is Mo, who I've spent a lot of time chatting to over the years.
Want to have live chats with me or just connect with other cricket fans on Discord that also enjoy my content? Or a few AMAs. Maybe you want early podcast episodes or ad-free content or want to receive my emailer. You can get all of this on our Patreon, plus a little bit of behind the scenes stuff as well. Huge thanks to everyone who has supported us on Patreon so far. You are all part of this channel's success.
Mo has even been to my house. The reason he came was a little bit baffling, even to me back then. But I had a sports writing course called Fans with Laptops, which is not active at the moment, but will be active again very soon. We're just changing platforms with it. But we also used to do them in my house sometimes because it was easy and people would come over and we'd spend a day talking about sports writing. Mo came to one of those events. And it was very interesting to have someone there who understood the players and what they needed. But he was very interested in narratives and everything else. And I can't remember if it was before this or after this, but he actually hired me at ICA to kind of come up with these like little stats/narrative packages to send off so that you could actually sell players to leagues around the world. I had done work like this with other agencies before in the past where they wanted some information or some nice paragraphs or whatever it may be to send off to someone, but I'm pretty sure I did more of it with ICA than anyone else. I found it a lot of fun because you'd find these players who weren't particularly well known, but they had a couple of like micro skill sets, and then trying to show to coaches or owners or analysts from other teams why they would fit in quite well with their lineups. But of course, with Mo in my house and me doing work for ICA and also the Ajmal interview, I spent a lot of time with him. And at one stage, Mo also got me a job. The Euro T20 League had a team called the Edinburgh Rocks. I still have the shirt somewhere, although I can never find it. That league didn't end up going ahead, but because I worked with the Scottish coach at that time, I was offered the analyst job for Scotland. So in some ways, Mo actually is the reason I work with Cricket Scotland, even though he had nothing to do with that deal. So you can certainly see how Mo and myself overlap quite a bit here. So while a lot of people would have read this headline and been like, oh, that doesn't sound very good, I was a lot more interested in this than most people ever would have been, because not only did I know the guy, but I'd had a relationship with it. But of course, Mo was an agent, and that was his main part of his business. But to be an agent in the UK, you actually have to be sanctioned by the ECB. That is a big part of it. And a lot of people who try and represent players fall at that, whereas Mo had been doing it for quite some time. He was very well known within English cricket, probably more so for Pakistan and league cricket. In fact, if you look at what ICA did in league cricket, they would essentially keep their ears to the ground and find any opportunities and even sell those on to other agents to say that this player can go to this place and this player can go to this place. They were very clever. There was a lot of bottom dwelling, but they had so many irons in so many fires. In fact, Mo offered me about 2 or 3 jobs, but every time he would offer me a job, it didn't seem to be the kind of opportunity I wanted. Either it was with a team who I didn't particularly trust the ownership group of, or it was in a league where I didn't even see the reason why I needed to be there as an analyst. But what it showed was he was very active and he knew a lot of different people, and he also had the accreditation. All these things make him a completely legit person within the cricket industry. So all of this leads us to match fixing, right? Because if you read this, agent banned for 5 years for corrupt approach to county cricket, That sounds like match fixing, right? And of course, that comes directly from the ECB. They had their own trial and they have found Mo guilty. It's important to say that he has maintained his innocence all the way through. This was completely a situation of the witness versus the accused. But at the trials, Mo did have his own legal team and everything else. It wasn't like he was left alone. So it was one lot of lawyers versus another lot of lawyers. And then there was a committee who came up with a decision and they decided that he would be banned. And the conditions at which he was banned were for match fixing. And they mentioned a few other precedents while they were giving him this ban. The three precedents that they talked about were Loku Hetig and Jaya Sundra. So Loto Hetig and Zoysa, both of them were charged because they were actually talking to people who were involved with fixing, and they were actually going to bring in other people to have fixing. Jaya Sundra is a little bit more interesting. He was essentially trying to pay to change selection, but with the reasoning being that that would allow for fixing. All of these three were mentioned in the ECB report. And when I first read it, it made sense because let me tell you exactly what Mo was accused of at this point. Let's call it a selection payoff. Essentially, when he was talking to a coach who would be working in franchises, he said to this coach, if you pick my players, I will take a cut of the money from their fee, of which I will give you a bit of that cut. So you win and I win. Remember, he denies this, but he has been found guilty. There is absolutely no doubt that if Mo did this, it is a form of corruption. But there is some doubt to whether this has anything to do with match fixing. And the anti-corruption laws within cricket are all set up for match fixing. I think we can admit that this is definitely a form of corruption. Remember, Mo disagrees with all of this, but he has been found guilty. But if you're an agent and you are literally offering direct money to the people who are hiring your players, I think we could say there is an element of corruption there. Can we, though, suggest there is an element of match fixing? Both of these guys here, there is absolutely no doubt that there is match fixing. For Zoysa and Lokahetic, there is no doubt at all that these guys were involved in match fixing. That is what they were charged with, right? Jaya Sundra is a little bit different because he was paying a bribe in order to get players into the 11. Now, the underlying reason for that is probably so he could get them to fix. So it still relates to match fixing. That is not what Mo has been found guilty of. He's trying to make sure that his players are picked so that he gets paid, and then he's paying off the other person. So there's still an element of bribery with Jaya Sundra. But it's not to fix matches. It's just to get players in. Agents do this all the time. It's just that generally it's structured in a different way. Agents will suggest to some people that if their players are getting picked, the agent might be able to get them more jobs into the future, which is still an element of bribery. It's just that you're not getting the money directly at that stage. And I don't want to pretend like this is a cricket thing. This happens right across sport. Have a look at the way that agents completely run sport. The thing about this is it was very naked and it was easy for him to be done for this. But this is corruption, normal corruption. It is not match fixing. And yet the ECB decided to regulate him on the match fixing side of things. That's quite interesting because this opens up a whole different world. There's a lot of corruption in cricket. Pakistan versus India at every single World Cup in men's and women's cricket. Wonder why that just keeps happening randomly. We are openly fixing the format so that everyone can make more money. I think you can make a pretty good argument that that is a form of corrupting the sport's integrity. And you might be thinking, well, Jarrod, yeah, but they have to make money somehow. Well, I suppose, isn't that what Mo was thinking? This guy was still going to be picking players. It's not like Mo has dud players. He wasn't putting in like 18-year-olds who couldn't play the game. These were good franchise-based players that would have done very good roles for this coach. We don't have to play India versus Pakistan every time. But you might be like, that's a step too far. A lot of people don't like it when I bring that one up. So let's try something else. Ground allocation. How many times in cricket boards do you see there's a new chairman or a CEO or someone of influence from a particular area, and then suddenly, as if by magic, that area starts to get a lot more games allocated to them? That is corruption. There is absolutely no doubt about it, and we see it again and again in cricket. There are many cases of this. And what about World Cups? Where are the pitch decks? Where's the information? Who's come up with the best idea? How do we get information on who has actually tried to get a World Cup and hasn't got it and where that information is? It's all completely a closed shop, and it seems to be that the same countries keep getting major events again and again. is that not also a form of corruption? So my point here is, if a selection payoff that has nothing to do with match fixing can be linked to that when we're actually looking at the case itself and then the person actually gets suspended under the match fixing guidelines, can't some of the other things that go on in cricket, like, I don't know, how about selection anomalies where politicians suddenly end up playing in first class cricket, or their kids do? That can even happen in franchise cricket. That is clearly, again, another form of corruption. If we're opening up all forms of corruption under the match fixing regulations, surely that one could be on there as well. Misuse of funds. This happens from the club level all the way to the international level. And at the moment, unless the government gets involved or there's some sort of fraud that is openly there, nothing happens about it. But this is cricket's money that is going missing. Why aren't these people also suspended under match fixing? And you might be thinking, this doesn't make any sense, Jarrod. Not all of these things are match fixing. And you're kind of right. But I've written match fixing here. It's not called match fixing, is it? Anti-corruption unit. That's what it's called. We call it match fixing because it's almost always only used for match fixing. But this does seem to open it up for something completely different. You can have many questions about Mo and what he has done here. There's no doubt about that. And there should be more questions asked about it by investigative journalists. But there's nothing in the report from the ECB that suggests this is anything like match fixing. He could have just lost the right to actually be acting as an agent in the ECB, which I'm assuming would have then gone to other countries as well. That means that those organizations probably aren't linked to start with. But I keep calling this a selection payoff, which is what it is. But that's not how it's worded in the ECB report. Improper conduct relating to a match. There are variations of that all the way through, but that's essentially what they're saying is that by Mo going to this coach, he's essentially corrupting the game by bringing in players that the coach would not normally do, which is improper conduct relating to a match. Isn't a lot of the stuff I've said from before also improper conduct relating to a match? What if someone from a cricket board forces a groundsman to do something to a pitch that they don't actually want to do? Is that improper conduct relating to a match? Kind of feels like it is, right? Now, you could argue that the groundsman shouldn't be doing that anyway, and many people would. But I don't think you could argue that the groundsman should be done for match fixing under the anti-corruption unit, right? So there are kind of two things at play here. One is the fact that we don't actually have anything that looks into normal corruption. And so when this thing that sort of happened in the middle and was a bit of a gray area happened, it ended up with anti-corruption, despite the fact that this unit is really there for match fixing. If it's there for all these other things, suddenly that opens up a lot of people in cricket to a lot of suspensions and probably loss of income, right? Now, you could argue that this is actually overdue, and most sports should be looking at this. In fact, if you think about WADA. At the moment, they are basically set up to go after one or two guilty people at a time, maybe a small organization. But WADA is just trying to stop drugs within sport. The bigger problem is not drugs within sport anymore. It is the global corruption of sport that sometimes allows for drugs. WADA is going to struggle to go up against a multinational company, a massive country, or a huge franchise in sport. And so WADA is not set up to be able to deal with the actual thing that is the issue in sport, which isn't drugs anymore, it's the corruption. So cricket absolutely needs an organization looking into corruption, but it's a very different situation than match fixing. The people who are hired to work in the ACU are used to trying to catch people actually doing crimes. The ACU, and we will do another video just on them at one stage to explain. The ACU is also not really set up to help in match fixing, because match fixing is now way bigger than how the ACU operates, but also there's no way that the ACU can actually handle the major corruption in cricket. We would need a whole different organization. And I don't know of many sports that have an organization that looks at corruption within the sport itself. It's mostly drugs or the odd fixing event, right? But this is a billion-dollar industry now. And the kinds of ways that we're going to see corruption in the future are going to be a lot more than simple drug taking and the odd player not trying very hard. I also wonder how often things like this happen in cricket and we don't notice. Remember, the only reason I'm taking so much of an interest in all of this is basically because this man has been in my house. I have met him on multiple occasions and I've talked to him quite a lot. And so I'm really interested in this. And until now, I've seen so many articles talking about his suspension and linking it to the match fixing and everything else. But not that many people have looked into it to say, is this actually match fixing? Or have we opened up a new Pandora's box that perhaps cricket didn't mean to do, but the ECB just had to suspend him for something, and so they put it down here as a catch-all? But has that one decision opened up a lot more when it comes to corruption and improper conduct relating to a match?